about navigating choppy waters, how to chart adolescence with your teens. And my name is Heather Rossell. I'm a dietitian at Ann and Robert H. Children's Hospital of Chicago. And these are our disclosures. We just want to say thank you to Moran for sponsoring this event today. So I wanted to do just a little bit of housekeeping. Did everybody see the nice little booklet they got on their chair? One of the things we wanted to point out is that there's going to be questions during the session. You see the QR code on the screen there, so you can actually go ahead and use your phone and scan that code, and you can type in your questions through that website, or you can go to your browser and type in sli.do and use code PKU. You can get to the questions there as well. We'll also have just live questions to the old-fashioned way. There will be questions after each talk and then at the end of the whole session. So if you have a question after a speaker, you can read a statement to the end as well. The one type of question we won't be able to answer is specifically on therapies. So we'll just be keeping things general in regards to therapies. And then within the booklet, there is an evaluation. So if you could fill that out at the end, that would be wonderful as well. And this booklet is great. It has kind of a summary of what we're going to be talking about today and a little bit more about the bios of the speakers that are going to be speaking today. So I'll go ahead and introduce everybody. Our first speaker is going to be Grace Birch. She is a young adult with PKU from the Chicagoland area. She's going to be talking about navigating PKU. It's a brain thing. And then Dr. Deborah Wilder, she's a psychiatrist from Salt Lake City, Utah, and she's going to be sharing with us about parenting PKU teens as they sail towards independence. And then Dr. Mina Driver, she's a psychologist from Springdale, Arkansas. She's going to be talking about learning the ropes, teaching your teen how to make decisions in hot and cold situations. And then finally, I will be speaking on giving your young adult more autonomy with their PKU. So without further ado, ask Grace to come up and share this. This is my disclosure. I was diagnosed with PKU at birth, and I am now 22 years old. Approximately 2 days after I was born, my parents got the call that I had PKU. My phenylalanine tolerance from birth is 300 milligrams a day, which, as most of you probably have, is equivalent to 6 grams of protein from natural foods a day. Growing up as a child with PKU, my parents really focused on treating me the same as all my other siblings who did not have PKU. They didn't coddle me, but they did still make it clear that my PKU was an important responsibility to myself that I would always have. Now, I definitely still fought them at times, and I tried testing my limits. I experienced symptoms in my childhood when I had a day or two where I ate over my limits, or even at times when I was sick and it caused my phenylalanine levels to spike as they do. Experiencing primarily an unnerving irritability as a consequence, usually displayed as tantrums at the most inconvenient times. You'd think I would have taken the hint that maybe this whole sweet treats out of the pantry was not worth earning the reputation as the overly emotional child. Enter adolescence and the Broadway-level dramatic need to fit in. My transition to adolescence with PKU was a rocky one. Having PKU impacted my social anxiety in school and around new friends. This was the age when everyone really started caring about if
they fit in, and being different is not something I was necessarily proud of anymore. My family was still reinforcing that everyone has differences and they make us unique. But in adolescence, I started to pay less attention to what my parents said and more to the peer pressures that I was feeling. I still made good friends who understood my PKU and saw me no different. It was when I was around people who I didn't know that I was afraid of what they would think of me. Primarily when I carried around my yellowish, milky colored formula that didn't smell very great. If someone didn't know me, they would always ask what it was, what PKU was, what it smells like, what it tastes like. They tell me they felt bad for me because PKU must suck. Or I would have many people ask to smell my formula and then they'd make a comment like, that's disgusting, and compare it to spoiled milk. Those moments made me dread having to drink my formula at school, and there were many days when I would come home with a whole box. As I was getting older, naturally obtaining more independence and responsibility to myself meant my parents had to trust that I cared about my health as much as they did. And that was scary. We all know just how much our caretakers value our health. That is a high level of priority to live up to. Unfortunately, no matter how much I was told that taking care of my PKU should come first, it didn't. Not in my adolescence and not as a teenager. As a teen, when I was away from my mom, and there was access to delicious junk food that I was never allowed to eat, it was up to me to decide what was more important. The two choices that I thought were in front of me being my diet or my fun. This was not the truth. In actuality, my choices were my mental health, my grades, my relationships, and my self-confidence, or my temporary satisfaction. I did not realize this at the time, and I chose temporary satisfaction most often. You see, I was not aware of the symptoms I was experiencing, not as aware as I am now. I knew what mood swings were and what they felt like. I knew I had brain fog most days in school. However, these started feeling less like symptoms and more like personality traits the longer that I broke my diet. I lacked consistency in choosing low phenylalanine food over high, taking my medications, performing blood pH level tests, and finishing off my supplements by the end of the night. I would lie to my friends and say I hadn't had much phenylalanine that day, so I was okay to have a slice of pizza while sleeping over, or some ice cream while staying up late with them. Although I was clearly not managing the responsibilities that I had, as a teen I was demanding to be more independent and for my parents to step back. During high school, I was more worried about what people thought and compared myself to others. Social issues like my status at school, my friends going out, the dance team I was on at the time, those things felt more important than taking care of my health. What was particularly tricky for me was when I started driving and had a job. I would go with friends or just by myself and eat fast food all the time. Due to PKU symptoms primarily affecting us patients mentally, it felt as if the consequences of my poor decisions would creep up on me and take over unexpectedly, gradually increasing in frequency until they felt almost normal, like it was just me. As a result, I concluded that maybe my PKU wasn't that big of a deal. And honestly, I didn't want it to be a big deal because I didn't want to be different than anyone else. I wanted to have the same experiences as everyone. Therefore, I pushed my responsibilities to the back burner. Ultimately, I did get to a breaking point right before I started my college career, where I felt completely out of control in my own body. And it took a major toll on my self-esteem. I was diagnosed as depressed and had developed generalized anxiety disorder. My parents would have many talks with me because they were attentive and noticed what I was doing, or rather, I wasn't doing. It was impossible for PKU to not always be in the back of my mind, but my actions didn't reflect that it was a priority at all. Moving forward, I decided that I wanted to take whatever control I have over my happiness and what's going to be my life. I have learned a great deal about mental health so far in my 22 years of evolving as a patient with PKU, through finally healing the relationship I have with myself, reaching out to our PKU community, partaking in therapy, seeing psychiatrists, and educating myself on the connection between what we eat and our physical and mental health. I now take pride in having PKU, and I'm proud of myself every day for choosing to fill my appetite with nourishing foods that do coincide with my PKU diet. I'm actively searching for opportunities to use my knowledge of PKU to help and support others who are seeking it. I am currently studying early childhood education. So, as a future educator of small children, large minds full of curiosity and big questions, I see my experiences playing a major role within my personal teaching philosophy. Although I will never be perfect in managing my PKU, I'm at peace with that thought because I know in the past it has only made me wiser on how to manage and more relentless in overcoming any struggles I may face. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Grace?
One thing I struggle with, my son is 15 and he has PKU, is how you determine what you and what is your body having a reaction to PKU for your symptoms. I think that's a really, it's hard to define, and it's hard to, how do you know if it's being a teenager or if you, I wonder how you've worked through that and helped figure out when it is your fee levels versus what's just you.
Yeah, I love that question. That's something I personally struggled with the most as a tween and a teenager is self-identity, because it's not like your skin turns purple when your fee level spikes, it's more of an invisible disorder. And so really, I think what helped me eventually come out of that was having people just to talk to and listen to my side of the story and kind of allowing me to paint the picture of who I am and what doesn't really feel like me, because I knew what was me. And when people would tell me things like, oh no, you're just a person who has bad attention and doesn't actually care to listen to other people, I knew that that's not me, though. I know that that's not my heart. And I think if you're not being listened to then as a PKU patient, it makes it very hard because you start to question yourself and think, okay, wait, maybe they're right. Maybe I actually don't know what I'm talking about. And so just being in here for your child, making them feel comfortable, that they can talk to you, and hearing them express themselves to you, is probably one of the most beneficial ways. Or finding someone that they feel they can talk to, even if it is outside of you. Because sometimes we don't always feel like we can talk to our parents sometimes as a teenager. Yeah, because they do know themselves, even though teenage years are very confusing for everyone with self-identity. You do still have a sense of self deep down, and making them feel comfortable, it's just in their point in person and letting that out.
I wanted to know, is your B level high? And was that a marker for you? Or for your parents? That's what I'm wondering. I have this. Your levels are always high. So it makes me wonder, I think, I'm wondering if that's something that I tell, or are you only like, how do you
Yes.
work?
So in my experience, what I guess the experience I was particularly talking about in adolescence and their teenage years, my P levels were high. I was not adhering to the diet. So in that sense, it's hard. Definitely, I guess the fog was there because of that. But even on the days when I was following diet, or the month when I stuck to it, I would always break it at that time eventually. It gets complicated because even though your P levels are high, you're still performing behaviors and they're still forming habits. So it kind of, even if your P levels then become low, you might still perform these behaviors because you're just used to responding that way. And so when people around this age go off diet for a long amount of time or quite often, they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off, it's just, it can become habits that you just stick to. So sometimes if the levels aren't even that high, you might still be acting as if they were. And that's where things get complicated. And that's when, looking back at least and reflecting on my experience, I wished I had gone to see mental health professionals to help me deal with that and learn new strategies to put in place and work on peeling back those unhelpful behaviors that I had learned from when I was on my feet.
That makes sense.
Right.
High.
So over 6, my blood P level would be over 6, which is the recommended amount. You want to be in the 2 to 6 range, and mine would be over 6. Sometimes it would get up to 15, or even 9 and 10. And for me, I would definitely see symptoms, even if it was just 9 and 10. So not dramatically. Yeah. Yeah.
So my daughter's at a point where she's moving with PKU right now, and she thought that she was when she shares with somebody new or she's just learning. And will end up sucks or brings in the person and will respond to them because she's okay because she has a response. Just like, she's kind of mad about it now, because she's like, this is how she feels. But she's not the words.
To explain, sorry, I'm just trying to find that, to explain how she feels about the PKU.
She feels fine about it. And then
Okay.
I think in videos or say that sucks, or we're gonna write this, or
Okay.
a response where she said that she feels insulted a little bit, their response. And so she's trying to figure out the right way, so that's right, what they can say, it's fine.
Yeah. So I encounter that still all the time. You'll have people even like in their 20s and probably 30s and so on, because a lot of people don't know about it. When they bring it up, they'll say, "Oh, that sounds like it's very miserable," or "I couldn't handle that," And I just kind of explain it more in a logical sense, like I was born with this. I've been dealing with it my whole life. I'm used to it. I've accepted it about myself, and I kind of tell them strengths that having PKU be a little bit like what was given me, I guess. And in that sense, it kind of makes a positive spin on things. And I feel like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that could be maybe why she's accepted it about herself as well, is, it causes struggles, but also you grow in a lot of different ways as a PKU individual because of the struggles, just like with any other disorder or chronic illness, any of that stuff. So yeah, I just point out the strengths that it's given me and that I'm proud now and own it about myself because it makes me unique. That's all I can learn.
Much praise for getting us off to a great start. Yes. These are my disclosures. And what I'll be talking about are just, is the stage of life that really is that transition between childhood and early adulthood. And we all go through stages in our life, and each stage has a goal, has something that ideally you'll accomplish before you move on to the next stage so that you're best set up to be successful in that next stage. And so in the school age years, so that's grade school, the goal is to figure out where you shine, what you're good at, whether it's being a student, whether it's being an athlete, whether it's being a great friend, whether it's certain activities that you just love and are interested in, and you know so much about, and want to share that interest in activities, figuring out where you shine. Because that next stage, adolescence, is really about figuring out who you are. And as you figure out who you are, you want to base that on really positive things about you, about where you shine, and what you like about yourself, and what you're interested in. So that subsequently, at the end of adolescence and in adulthood, you can share who you are. And you can feel comfortable getting to know other people who they are in peer relationships and within the partnerships. And through this evolution from school age to adolescence and adulthood, there's this inherent shift from keeping up from parents' opinions, what you think and caring, primarily about what your parents think and feel and want to please them, over to really it's your peers who you want to connect with and you want to understand, and you want to understand you. And so sailing towards independence, inherently during adolescence, it's known as a challenging time, and it is in general for many adolescents, and then you add PKU into this. And so as you get older, there is less parental oversight, invariably, for many individuals with diagnoses, those periods of elevated fee and Grace articulately described what that felt like for her. And for many, it can worsen mood disorders or anxiety, things that already during adolescence time this begins, subsequently leading to challenges at school, and then that affects how you feel, and that affects your confidence, and that affects how you take care of your PKU. And you can just see how you can get to this point where you reach the difficulty within yourself, and inherently parenting confidence can be really sad. So one thing I'd like to mention to you in this context, as part of talking about strategies, is recognizing that all that hard work that you guys did as your child did in those very early years, infancy, toddlerhood, early grade school, to maintain the things that you maintained, was so important. The impact of an elevated feed at that time has substantial impact that are like this lifelong. It has changes that occur in the brain as a result of that at that very early age that continue throughout that individual. As adolescents can feel the difference that feed they can feel the difference in their feed, as Grace was describing, and there are brain changes that happen that coincide with that increase in feed, and yet these brain changes are different. They're different from brain changes that happened in that early part of life, which when you were also conscientious to keep those goals and you could be in control. These brain changes have been found to be at least in part reversible, first of all, and second of all, definitely the effects of those brain changes, like attention, have been found to improve when individuals are able to eventually maintain more stable and more appropriate, better metabolic control. So, to the degree that you can, keep calm, stay positive as you feature this course with your child and adolescents. So if you're with high feed, you may find yourself being tempted to argue with your team around the PKU or other things, and I think it would be helpful to realize that the elevated feed itself can affect that teenager's ability to really benefit most from that instructional movement that we have had. They're less able to listen or pay attention, and add that to the selective listening and paying attention. They're going to have more difficulty processing. And it may be really hard to find the solution you're looking for with that type of approach. I would like you to consider trying to stay positive and finding yourself as support for that team and helping them build confidence in what they have been able to do and help them recognize who they are beyond their PKU. What they're interested in, what they love, what they like, beyond the PKU, and engaging them in that and helping them develop that part of who you are, particularly as PKU aspects can be particularly challenging at this time. Guilt is, we know through studies that guilt is something teenagers with PKU really can experience, particularly those with severe early treated PKU that we don't necessarily see in adults. And we don't know why exactly that's the case. They're obviously multifactorial. My suggestion as parents is to celebrate the successes. Invariably, teenagers will find themselves waxing and waning on diet and struggling, and yet recognizing what are they doing that is going well, and celebrate that. And when they are able to keep it together and celebrate that, to try to reduce the impact that guilt has on them, as this guilt is one of those emotions that is not as proactive as we think. Rather, it's the confidence in trying to be positive when we can. So it's much like dancing, and this is an analogy that Dr. Susan Wastebrand up in Boston told to me that I love, and so I use it all the time. It's like this dance in adolescence. Parents, they keep the step, they maintain the stability, and yet they find that right balance between keeping step and stability and having some flexibility. While the teenager may come up with new steps, and yet find themselves coming back, needing some support and some guidance, and yet go off and try to find some new steps and trying to maintain that balance to maintain that connection and that relationship between the parent and teenager and the teenager and content. So some psychiatrists and pediatricians as a child psychiatrist, and I find it helpful to know what lines to draw. And so these are lines that I learned about in my own training for teenagers. And this is general for any teenager, the 5 rules of teenagers. So take this with a grain of salt from that perspective. But and the idea is that if the teenager follows these 5 rules, it's unlikely, very unlikely, that a decision they'll make beyond these 5 rules leads to irreparable problems that they can't possibly recover from on their own or even with some guidance from you. And one is do nothing illegal. I realize, and what I'm referring to there would be age dependency. Some substances may be illegal, including cigarettes. It's at specific ages in which things are legal. And so do nothing illegal for your age. Go to school. You may not be paying attention. You may feel the student is not accomplishing what they should, but they're there. They're present. They live in your household. Do your chores, do the chores, and then I feel it's important to, that the parents always know where to find your child, where is your child at any point. And then following the basic family rules. I realize if you now pull out that long list, I think of Santa Claus, but that long list
But my suggestion really is to stick with like 2 or 3 rules that, and it's something that everyone in the family follows, not just the teenager, but everyone in the family follows these rules. So these are suggestions and considerations that were passed on to me many years ago, and I found it helpful. Yet with PKU, there are additional considerations to consider. Safety. So obviously driving with high speed, concentrations can be dangerous, and we need to have conversations with the teenagers. Pregnancy, the implications of unplanned pregnancies and young women with PKU is obviously far more complicated than with young women unplanned pregnancy and women without PKU. And being able to have conversations with your teenager, it's about these issues and how to prepare for them, and being able to say that you trust that individual. You may not trust the situation they can find themselves in, but it doesn't mean you don't trust them. And helping them prepare for circumstances which may be very difficult to otherwise navigate ahead of time. And we'll hear all about that from Dr. Robin Piper next. So finding this balance between parental guidance and direction and that freedom to make mistakes, I think is all about navigating those stormy waters in adolescence and finding that right balance for your teenager at that time. And with that, so the big picture is it's helpful to avoid puberty power struggles with teens, and really support that identity development beyond having PKU. The physiology to the brain during the pregnancy is significantly different fundamentally than what we see in adolescence and adulthood. And what we see in adolescence and adulthood is at least in part groups, we'll always look for those to measure, and as well as the things that can reverse contention. And regardless of like the concentration, there are so many things that we've heard about from Grace that relate to PKU besides drinking levels that increase insulin strain on top of adolescence. And so always, being comfortable consulting with your clinical team, your clinical provider, if you have questions with your teenager or you need some help on getting support and helping your teenager get their needs met, and the support they need to help them manage their role themselves as well.
Maybe one question?
Yeah, one that came in on the iPad last month. Start with this one, and you have to remember that. So, how do I help my teenager build confidence and stay positive when I really see them struggling?
So, confidence, when you think about confidence, it's really kind of the spectrum. And it helps when you're building confidence to look at your strengths and be very strength-based. And that's not always easy as a parent to support the child looking at strengths when like everything they're doing is they're doing that. Like you can just nitpick. Like all these things that like, clean your room, make your bed, don't leave your food out like that. Like it's hard to consciously stop yourself and rather catch them being good and catch them on what they are doing and talk to them about what is going well or what their interests are. Potentially, even spending some one-on-one time with them on what they would like to do. They can come up with what they would be really interested in doing and be able to break that time apart so that you two can share what they're interested in doing and really just help them build that relationship with you so they can be comfortable with you, as well as help them focus on what it is they enjoy and what it is they're good at as they navigate this. And then, if you do worry about things becoming more significant, like anxiety or depression, they just need to be teenagers to experience that, let alone PKU on top of it. No, having to develop this relationship with your clinical team and being comfortable reaching out and asking for resources and support is important. And supporting your teenager as they do that, and they have your support, and that's okay. It's just really important to be able to communicate. Thank you.
And I see there's some more that are coming in. We have more time at the end, and so at the end, any questions that might have come in for the speakers already, we can get back to.
All right, hi everybody. Dr. Debbie Gilder here. Did a really nice job of giving us an overview of launching your adolescents, transitioning them. I'm going to be working a little bit more with you all in the next 10-15 minutes about more of the minutiae, the details of when your adolescent is in an icky or tricky situation. There are 3 words that I commonly use. I'm a child psychologist, and I use the word icky, tricky, sticky all the time. Okay, it's great to be talking about things that are icky, tricky, sticky. I love it. What we'll talk about is more details of how to get through the nuances. And I like to start talking with parents about the ventral striatum. The ventral striatum is the area of the brain that is just smack dead center of your brain, right here. So if I were to put an arrow down this way and an arrow going this way, the ventral striatum is located right in the middle of your brain. And it's the area that's in charge of motivation, reward, addiction, learning, and memory, okay? Neuroscientists, neuropsychologists like myself, we always talk about cells that fire together, wire together. When we do a behavior that's addictive, our brain gets wired to do something like that. It's also the area that's in charge of risk-taking behavior, okay? That area lights up when an adolescent does something that is risk-taking, maybe daring, maybe something that they're not used to doing and they're looking cool in front of their friends. It's the area that lights up when we, as adults, go to Las Vegas and play craps or roulette. Even for little children, too. Little children, they think they're being sneaky by stealing a cookie out of a cookie jar. Those types of sneaky behavior, the ventral striatum is that area that lights up and it gets really excited. Unfortunately, the ventral striatum, it doesn't actually really completely develop until you're about 25 years old. For men, unfortunately, a little bit later, 25, 26, 27, right? And some of you out there might be thinking you're still working on it right now, and that's okay. I'm a child psychologist, so don't ask me. But the point is that it's the area of the brain that develops last, okay, that control center. So risk-taking behavior lasts for quite a long time with our adolescents. Peer influence is everything. We know that adolescents, having their peers, accepting them, and being accepted by them is everything. We also know, too, that adolescence is a time for increased risk-taking behavior. Think about it when you were in middle school or high school. Think about the behaviors that you did. Maybe you will never, ever tell your parents. Maybe you will never, ever tell your teenagers as well the things that you did, right? But if you think about it, what are some risk-taking behaviors? Not you, not none of you did these, but what type of risk-taking behaviors did one engage in? Driving fast? What else? Everybody's being innocent here. Maybe drinking, right? Maybe sneaking out of the house. Okay, right? Risk-taking, daring types of behavior, right? That we got away with, and we didn't talk about that with anybody. We know, again, with adolescents that because risk-taking is so high at this age that they are easily distracted when they're in the car driving. Why are they distracted in the car driving? Because they have their friends in the car with them, right? Research has shown that car insurances for adolescent and adolescent males is significantly higher than adding on another adult in your home. Right? We all know this. I have a 15 and a half right now. We've already talked with our insurance at USA, and they said, oh my goodness, okay, good luck with this. Okay, it can be anywhere from $70 to an extra $400. Well, can you give me a ballpark? Can you really get $70 or $400? Okay, well, good to know. Yeah. Teenagers are distracted while driving. According to the CDC in 2019, accidents are the leading cause of death for adolescents. It's the leading cause of death for adolescents. Why? Because they are distracted. A lot of states have enacted a law of adolescents are not able to have friends in the car with them for at least 6 months to a year. They can't have any tickets, they can't have any infractions, they can't have any fender benders, nothing like that for about 6 months to a year. You can have a sibling in the car, you just can't have another peer in the car, okay? And again, those researchers show, the CDC has shown that as you have more kids in the car with you, your teens have more kids in the car with them, the increased likely of car accidents. And they generally happen at around 9 to 11 p.m. Why is that? Football games get out around that time. Baseball games get out around that time. Dances get out around that time, right? prom gets over around that time. And so they're getting in the car and they're driving their friends home, or they're driving their friends to, we're going to the hotel, we're going to a house party. Okay. These are the quotes that I have for my direct patients. So again, I'm a child psychologist, and I can't tell you how incredibly busy my virtual visits were during pandemic. I was so incredibly busy with adolescents doing what I call cognitive behavioral therapy. So I do cognitive behavioral therapy with adolescents, and I have two teenagers. My husband and I, we have two teenagers at home myself, and they scare me. And yeah, my patients came back every week to come back and see me. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but they came back and they did better. They did well, you know, during pandemic, which is amazing because pandemic was a very difficult time for all adolescents. But time and time again, my adolescents, my young adults would always just say, I want to be a normal teenager. I just want to be normal. I just want to be just like my other friends. Just like what Ms. Briggs was saying earlier. I want to be able to go to my friend's house. I want to be able to order pizza with them. I want to be able to have hamburgers. Whatever they're grilling, I want to eat what their dad is grilling, right? For some of my adults, young adults who are 21 and up, in college or outside of college now, working full time, you know, a lot of them would say, I wish that I could just go after work and just grab a beer and a hamburger with me and my friends. I can't do that, right? So my adolescents, my young adolescents, even young adults would say, you know, I would eat ahead of time at home. I would eat ahead of time at home. I didn't want my friends, you know, smelling my food or smelling before me, or wondering why I was just eating a salad. You know, I hated making excuses. And so they did these risk-taking behaviors by eating hamburger and eating foods that weren't so good for them because, again, they just wanted to fit in. They just wanted to be like everybody else. And that makes sense. For my teenagers, my older teenagers to young adults, disclosure was a huge issue. Like, when do I tell my boyfriend? When do I tell my girlfriend? When do I tell my potential spouse that I have PKU? How do I explain that to them? Do I tell somebody that, you know, maybe I'm not quite sure where it's going to go? Maybe it might scare them, right? And even telling friends too, do they disclose to their own friends as to, do they have PKU? Or maybe do they just kind of leave it and just continue to make excuses why they can't eat with their friends or eat at the same time? So again, you know, a lot of my adolescents, young adults would go off diet easily, you know, and luckily they would disclose that to me, and you know, we would say, let's work on this. How are we gonna work through this? Okay, and what would happen too is that they would have executive functioning difficulties. Their anxiety would go up. They'd have trouble with focusing, remembering. They would get into arguments with their mother and their father. Right? They would get in fights with maybe their boyfriend, their girlfriend, maybe even with their best friend. Well, I'm no longer friends with Johnny. Oh my God, you guys have been friends since kindergarten. What's going on here? I don't know. It's all Johnny's fault. Whatever. Adolescence is also the time of the age too when adolescents are secretive. They don't want to tell you things. They want to keep that to themselves. Maybe they don't even tell their own friends either. I was talking with my own son, or we were talking with my own son, and you know, he chats through this platform called Discord. Discord is like another, it's not, Mom, Dad, you're a boomer. That's what they say. You're a boomer. I'm like, I'm not even a boomer. I have gray hair, but boobs. Point is that actually, you know what they do say is they say bro. Like, so my husband and I are no longer mom and dad, we're bro. Okay, so bro, it's Discord. Like, can you explain to me what Discord is? Oh my God, you're such a boomer, right? Because texting on your regular iPhone or your Android is old school. It's boomer, right? Like, you got to do it through this other platform. Anyways, I'm digressing here. So what happens with our adolescents is that they might get into arguments, right, with you. They might get into more arguments with you, arguments with their friends. They're forgetting to do what they need to do. Their grades are poor. They're not keeping with their homework. They're having a hard time bringing what's at school right back home again. Let's talk with parents again about the anatomy of the brain. So earlier in my first slide, I talked to you about the ventral striatum, right? The area that lights up when adolescents are excited. This is the typical anatomy of the brain. So if I am standing this way, this is kind of like the periphery of what I'm showing you. This is my frontal temporal lobe here, frontal temporal lobe here. Again, this is the area of the brain that doesn't develop until you're about 25, 26, 27 years old. Again, it's the area that's in charge of executive functioning, planning, organization, emotions, behavior, learning and memory. lots of really interesting and very necessary things as adolescents. I'll tell you, my parents that I work with will tell me this is what their adolescent brain looks like. Hello, thinking about their boyfriend or their girlfriend. They're thinking about that boy in physics, that girl in biology. I love how the memory for chores is a part of their brain, right? And I do love this love for parents, like yin and yang, right? And I know in my household, there's a lot of stomping, right? Slamming of doors, right? Slamming of doors. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna take your door off, right? Yeah, as we see here too, rebellion is huge, self-image is everything. Addiction is really large in this area as well. We talked about cells that fire together, wire together, right? For adolescents, they start drinking at an early age. We are proponent for addiction in our family. That can pass all throughout to their young adult to adult lifetime. Smoking, drinking, all those behaviors have consequences. Okay, this is a nugget of my talk. Okay, so if you don't get anything out of my whole talk this afternoon, it'll be this part. Okay, teenagers know what to do. They just don't know how to do it. Okay, there's a big difference between what and how. Okay, my point is this. You talk with your teenagers, your young adults about, hey, you're gonna go to a party on Saturday night. I know, bro, I know, okay? You've told me this so many times. I know that when I go to a party, I'm not gonna drink. If Catherine gives me, a ride home and she's been drinking, I know I'm not gonna ride home with her. I'm never gonna take a vape pen. I'm never gonna smoke marijuana. I'm never gonna do any of those things, right? With adolescents, everything is always so definitive. Never, I always, you never, right? Those words always come up very quickly in conversation. So they know what they need to do, right? They know exactly what they need to do when they go to the party. The problem is that when they get to the party, and it is the party of the year, it's the end of the school year, and all the friends are there, the cheerleaders are there, the volleyball players are there, the softball players are there, the football players are there, they got invited to this really fun party, everybody's there, the music's hot, everybody's out there, Ventral Striatum is hot, it is on fire, it is lit up, right? When your brain is lit up, guess what? Your adolescent doesn't know how to react and how to function in that moment. Their brain is like, blah, 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 blah. I'm going crazy. It just lights up and it's on fire and it doesn't know what to do. Again, in that moment, your adolescent is saying, oh my God, that's right. I told my mom I would not drink. Oh my God, I told my dad I just had this conversation with them. I told them I wouldn't. And they get to the party and they see Billy holding a can of beer. And they see Catherine holding a cigarette. And they see Johnny holding a vape pen, right? What happens easily at a party? Y'all remember, y'all are in middle school, high school, college. Your friend gives you a beer, and what do? Right? You're in that moment, you're like, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, right? So in the adolescent in that moment, they're just like, they don't know how to navigate that. It's a really hot situation, everybody's looking at them, right? And maybe it could just be too that maybe this is one of the many parties that your adolescent has attended, right? They went to one party last week with a huge football party. And then the next day at school, everybody was giving high fives to Johnny because he got so drunk, he got so weak, he fell down the stairs. Oh my God, it was hilarious. And his social elevation has just skyrocketed, right? And so again, with adolescents, everything is all about peer pressure. It's all about image, and it's about looking good, and it's making sure that they're doing all the right things so that they can become popular. It's difficult. It's hard to navigate that when you're in that moment. And so, again, we have to work with our adolescents and be their second brain. I always tell this to parents, you need to be your child's second brain. And I always tell parents this too. If I give you any advice today, this is what it is. Parents are always saying, what were you thinking? Your adolescent's gonna say, I don't know. Right? I don't know, right? Like, stop asking that question because they don't know. In that moment, their brain was so hot, they weren't thinking, right? And so, we have to work with our kids during a cold situation. A cold situation is, let's say you're eating dinner at home, and it's a cold, neutral situation. I get the best conversation sometimes with my kids when I'm driving with them. We're going on a road trip, right? Or sometimes when I'm driving their friends too, and they're in the back seat, and I kind of overhear the conversation, right? Those are really nice cold states. It's a cold state. There's no emotions raging. There's no feelings that are involved right there. It's a really great time to be able to talk to your adolescents about problem solving in that moment, right? So one of the things that we do in our household is, and this is work for other households as well, is that, if my son is at a party, right, he might send me a text or an emoji. You guys can think of a code word in your family, right? And so, in our family, we use that poop emoji. And so, so my son, he'll send us a poop emoji, right? And then my husband and I will call, and then we'll say, there's been an emergency, and we need to pick you up. Right? And that's in that moment when he's just not feeling safe. He's like, I don't know what to do. Like, I just went to this party, there was a lot of smoking, drinking going on there. It was a high school party I got invited to. And so it's one of those things where that's just a quick way for them to get out of that situation. And even if you don't get them up, they could just say to their friends too, like, hey, I just got a phone call from my parents. Oh my God. My parents call, I'm afraid of their parents, No one ever wants to get away with anybody's parents. Anyway, you could just say, your child could just say too, that like, hey, my parents just called and there's an emergency, they're going to follow up with me later on, so I'm not going to transfer you. Another thing is also some parents might work out too, like if your child plays sports, right? A lot of times when you're playing sports, you're not allowed to drink, smoke, do any of those activities, you get kicked off the team. And that's huge, especially if your kid is doing really well in sports too. So really thinking about like, how are you going to get your child out of those situations? But you got to practice that in a controlled state. You also have to know too that your adolescents are going to make mistakes. They're going to make natural mistakes. We hope that your child never does a mistake that is devastating for themselves or for anybody else, right? But we want to make sure that we offer them those moments and be able to talk to them in that moment about what happens when they get home the next day, right? We're not going to be going, what were you thinking? We're not going to ask them those questions because they're going to say they don't know. They don't have an explanation for that. They don't have that cognitive ability or the articulation to be able to articulate what were they thinking. They weren't. So some strategies that you can work on with your family is kind of like what I was saying earlier. Again, being your child's second brain, I think is so important. One of the things too that some of my patients young adults have talked with me about too, is that what their parents did to them is that they didn't teach them how to cook. And so when they went off to college, so I had one specific patient that said, my parents took care of everything. My mom cooked, she did all my formula, my dad did all my dietary laws, I was part of it-ish, but they did all the cooking for me, and so I wasn't part of that. And when I went to college, I just freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to take care of my own diet or my own regimen. So it's really important that you involve your kids into their supplement making, their medicine, how to call a doctor, how to fill a prescription. Start that early as soon as possible. Again, as your adolescents get older, they're going to be moving more away from you from home. So we want to teach them those skills. And we're going to do a disservice for them if we don't teach them those skills. I want to just add really quickly too. There's an app that I really like. My husband and I have it on our phone. It's called Life 360. I don't know if any of you guys have it. Life 360 is a great app. It's free. You get it on your iPhone. You get it on your Android. You can see where your teens are. It's just kind of like Find My Phone, but you can see if your adolescent has been texting while they're driving. You can see if they've been on their phone while driving as well. So again, you might be talking to your adolescents about, hey, remember when you're in the car with your friend John, I don't want you to be like fiddling with your phone, okay? But you can see from this app as to like if there's been those activities that's going on. Again, it's just a safety measure to be able to have a conversation with them about, hey, last night I saw that you were on your phone and you were texting some friends. I just want to know that you need to be really careful with that. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to talk a little bit about the diet aspect of adolescence. As we've already heard, there's many new challenges, more choices, hopefully some freedom, and ultimately more responsibility for our children during this age and stage. So this graph represents, unfortunately, what we see with fee levels as age progresses. And we see the biggest change between 5 to 12-year-olds and 13 to 17-year-olds. And so our hope and goal is to help equip parents to kind of not see this in their child's PKU management and control. And This has kind of been described as something called the cycle of decline. So this kind of is a circle of what happens with feed control during the adolescent age and the adult age if we don't make changes. So it really starts with problems with adherence. And problems with adherence leads to high feed levels, and high feed levels, as we know, can lead to increased symptoms from PKU. So how, again, as parents, can we support our adolescents to not have these challenges with adherence? So looking particularly at the diet, we're all familiar with some of the challenges and the barriers with the diet. We know that there's cost, lack of convenience, social barriers, logistical barriers. So again, how can we be strategic and optimize and encourage our teams around the diet? One of the things I love to encourage is start involvement early. And that can look as simple as your child being a part of making a meal. Do they help with counting their feed or their protein? Do they help with mixing formula? How can you allow your child to partner with you to be involved with their PKU management? I think alongside this topic, creating a safe and supportive environment is really important. I know sometimes as parents it's easy to say, okay, you're old enough, it's your turn to take over, I've done this for 15 years, but it's better to be supportive. So, encouraging them, ask them how they're feeling in regards to managing their diet and their PKU. Another thing I'd like to encourage is giving adolescents as much freedom as possible. This diet is restrictive, so how can we create freedom within the restrictions that we know that they have? And then always encouraging and modeling healthy eating habits. So fruits and vegetables, many of them are low in feed. And so are we as a family, as parents, modeling good healthy eating in our own lives and the lives of other people in your family as well? So one of the things that I think is great to provide some more freedom in the diet is taking the simplified diet approach. How many of you guys, I raise a hand, do the simplified diet approach? Okay, all of you. So this is it's not new, it's been around probably 10 years, I would guess. So this is a way of managing the PKU diet. So it's not that we don't count these foods, but we kind of allot a certain amount of feed to these foods that we can call free. And so I'll just give an example. So if you have 500 milligrams of feed that you can work with, we set aside about 100 milligrams for all of these lower feed foods. And so you would only count 100 milligrams, but then you would allow 100 milligrams to be utilized for these fruits and vegetables and low protein foods. And so then they can feel the freedom of eating all of these fruits and vegetables without feeling like they have to count every food that they, piece of food that they put in their mouth. And then, of course, it is encouraging eating fruits and vegetables. So that's one example of how to give a little bit more freedom and encourage the eating habits. Another thing is, just keeping track of diet. How do we do that, again, with our adolescents? I'm sure many of us are familiar with the how much feed program. Do you guys use that or use some programs? MyFitnessPal, that's not something that's oriented to PKU, but you can use that to even just keep track of your diet. If you're counting grams of proteins, is a great way to, or a great app to use. Even taking pictures, if you're eating a meal, taking a picture of it, so you can remember, okay, maybe I ate a little bit higher at lunch, I need to be a little bit lower during dinner. Making diet fun, I think, is important as well. Getting them involved in the kitchen, going to the farmer's market. We've heard a lot about social interactions and talking through things like eating out. We've heard about peer pressure and social dynamics. So again, talking through those things with your adolescent to make sure that you can follow to make decisions. And then, of course, making sure that they understand the importance of nutrition. So this next slide has kind of a lot going on here, but it's really to kind of talk about the three main things that can affect our feed levels. So the first one is obvious. If we eat more feed than our body is able to utilize, our feed levels go up. So if you add too much feed, you're going to get high feed levels. The second one, which is probably still pretty obvious, but maybe not so much, is getting adequate amounts of protein in the diet. And so we hear PKU, we think low protein, which is low dietary protein, but actually people with PKU need more total protein, and so that's that feed-free protein from formula. And if we don't have enough protein from the formula on board, our feed levels can go up. So most people probably realize that as well. The third component is actually getting adequate calories. And so you can have the perfect amount of feed intake, you can have the perfect amount of formula intake, and you don't have enough calories on board, your feed levels can go up. And that's something that you can see in adolescents particularly. They're skipping meals, they're skipping formula, or they're really active with sports and activities. So just making sure that that third component of adequate calories is being addressed as well. So we talked about the diet. Formula is very similar in regards to some of the challenges and barriers. We kind of talked about the importance and benefits. So again, just making sure your adolescent understands why they're needing to drink this formula. And I'm sure they hear it often in their clinic visits, but making sure they remember why it's so important. Honestly, one of the biggest motivators is growth. I look at growth charts and say, you can only grow so much if you don't have enough formula or protein on board. So encouraging them that good nutrition helps with growth and many other things. Spreading formula throughout the day, I'll talk a little bit more about variety in formula. I think this is important to talk about as well in regards to looking at bars or tablets, especially around social situations at school. If it's easier to take to school or not be so conspicuous, this is something that's good to think about as well. So this is just a visual looking at why it's important to spread formula out throughout the day. So just like most of us don't eat all of our calories in one sitting, our body can't really utilize all of the protein in one big dose. And so it's important to spread it out so the benefits of the amino acids aren't lost in the urine potentially. So drinking it at least 3 times per day is really important in regards to the body to be able to utilize and maximize the benefit. So for formula, make sure that it is part of your routine. We all have those smartphones with alarms, so setting alarms throughout the day to make sure you're remembering to take it, planning ahead, again, thinking through your day's schedule. Do I have soccer practice at the end of the day? Do I need to bring something that's easy to mix up? And then starting your day out right. Again, giving your body that good nutrition, the protein, those amino acids that help your brain as well as your body. And then think through how to bring it and make it more convenient. And then even having backup access to formula, like at a friend's house or at school or in a locker or something like that. So finally, just want to encourage you guys, this is a journey that is best done with other people around you. So kudos for coming to NKUA, but think about how you can connect with other parents, encouraging your child to be connected with other adolescents that have PKU. Find support groups locally, and then you can share with a friend, maybe with someone that doesn't have a PKU family member, but just sharing, I think, is important as well.
We'll open it up for questions for any of those speakers.
We had one that came through at the end of Dr. Builder's talk, right as we were switching. So I'll just ask you that one. Can you direct us to studies that suggest high feed levels in the teen years are reversible?
Email me and I can send you the link. And more specifically what I'll be sending you links for is showing that the white matter changes that are part of having elevated levels during, that are present universally by the end of adolescence, will reduce when sustained oral treating has been established. So these circumstances.
Yeah, one that came in from Grace as well. I should ask that one to you. What convinced you to think long-term rather than about temporary satisfaction?
I would say what convinced me to be long term was really looking at my health in general. It's kind of like following a diet, you know, you can't follow a diet to try and lose weight, let's say, and then stop and just minute and go back to your old ways. It's not very effective. And so, unfortunately for me, I messed up so many times, like I would keep trying and then just getting off of it and trying again and getting off of it, that I would realize all my efforts of even trying in the first place were kind of not paying off at all. It's kind of nothing. And so what really helped me was learning about how, or more about, I guess, how what we eat affects us physically and mentally, really doing my research on that or asking more questions to my clinician team, my dietitian, just educating myself as much as possible and getting more involved within that. It then becomes just more logical, I guess, to take care of it in the long term and make it more of a lifestyle change. Thinking about also, I guess, what you're taking in instead of what you're cutting out of your diet really helped me as well. Because I wanted to be getting all the vitamins I need through the day, and I wanted to be getting all the minerals and stuff like that to perform my best and be my best day to day. So I would think, well, did I eat enough whole vegetables today? Am I getting, enough of that in? And then I go and do that, and I get full instead of, oh, I'm really hungry, but I can't have this and I can't have that. So I think that gives it a positive spin too, and makes it easier to change to long term.
Just to summarize, it was just so lovely to have Grace talk to us about her own experience as she navigated her adolescent years as daughters not too long ago. And what it was like to have elevated faith in how she went through that process of recognizing what she needed to do to take care of her baby, in her health and finding the resources she needed to make that possible for in such an amazing place. Today, be able to share her story. And my perspective is really about navigating that dance between that parental setting guidance and freedom and teenagers and their ability to take their body and having support and as they navigate their world. Focusing on that relationship between teenagers, parents, and the child, and then realizing that there are biological reasons that teenagers are teenagers, and understanding so much better that mentoring and what's going on there, and really recognizing and understanding, when you catch that wave, so to speak, in regards to seeing the whole moments and the situations where you really can talk about important issues and come up with solutions and ideas so that when a hot situation comes up, your teenager knows not just what to do, but how to do it, to give them the sympathy and fun. And then the dietary parents and very quickly, changes during adolescence and understanding how to simplify things and make it more doable as teenagers are taking on that work for themselves. The importance of distributing that whole throughout the day and how that makes a difference. And anticipate in chart, those rough waters that you might see ahead of time to really optimize your ability to you so much for your interest in
We actually did just get one more question that came in, and it's a good question, so I'm gonna pose it, I don't know, Heather, or maybe or Dr. Boulder want to answer this, but it's kind of a touches a lot of these talks today. With most teens, drinking seems inevitable. What do we know about how alcohol affects female health? This is a great question.
I mean, from a just purely nutrition perspective, alcohol in general does not have health in it. But if the alcohol is replacing good nutrition, then that can obviously impact females.
So I do not know chemically how alcohol affects these levels. I can tell you how alcohol affects the brain, decision-making, and judgment. That will definitely impact.
Thank you.